So what we want to look at now is improving the output of what we get back from our server in our error messages. And we really want to flatten this array because if I type in a weak password and click register, we can see that we've got the email, the password with several different password fields, and then the display name. And what we want to do here is we want to take the messages from this and just flatten them into a single array of validation errors. And let's see how we can achieve this. And we'll just go back to VS Code. And we want to open our error message component. And what we want to do is provide a list of the validation errors. We'll keep the text just in case we want to display a very simple error message, just like we did in our login component. But when it comes to our registration, we want to display the list of validation errors that we get back from there. So what we can do is, first of all, we want to add an expression, and we want to see if we've got anything in the error.data. And we also want to check that the object.keys and pass in the error.data.errors.length is greater than 0. And then inside here, what we'll do is we'll add a message.list. And inside here, we'll loop over our errors, flatten out the array, and just display the values rather than the keys and the values. And this is pretty simple to do with the object methods that we have available. So what we can do is we can say object.values, and then we can pass in the error.data.errors. And then we can use an array property or an array method on this, and we can use the flat. And this is going to return a new array with all sub-array elements concatenated into it recursively up to the specified depth. Now our errors are only going to go 2 deep at most, so we'll just use the flat as it is, and then we'll say map, and because we're just getting the values here, we'll specify ERR, and then we'll also pass the index of the array into this expression as well, so that we can make use of the index as the key that we need when we loop over this. And inside here, what we can do is a message.item, and we'll give this a key equal to I for the index, and then inside here we can just specify the error, or the validation error in this case. And let's just go take a look at how this looks, and if we click on register again, I'll just add some text in there and just a weak password as well, and then if I click on register, we can see we get a list now of our validation errors, and we see all the rest of it because I still have inside the register form the text property here. So I'll just remove that and just go back and click on register again, just do the same thing again, and now we get a list of our different validation errors, and that looks a lot better. But obviously we don't want to let our users even submit bad data, so let's add our validate function back in, and then let's go back to our form. There's a couple of other tests I want to do before we leave this part, and the first one is to make sure that we can't send up a username that's already existing, and I'll just use fake@test.com and give it a valid password, and what we should see is an error saying that this username already exists. And if I try and click on register, then we do see that. And if I say bob@test.com and change the username, then what I should see is that email already exists. And if I change the email and make the password a weak password, then we get all of our different error messages displayed on here as well. And it would be a good idea to test that we can actually create a new user and be redirected as well to our activities page. So I'm just going to create a new user called Fred and username of Fred and say fred@test.com and give it a complex password and click on register, and that worked. And what we want to do now is just check to see our console just to make sure there's no warnings, and I've got my previous errors still inside my console, so let's just refresh the page, make sure there's no actual errors. And what we'll do is we'll just go through these warnings and just remove the warnings and fix any issues that are identified in here. The main one is the activity dashboard. Our React hook use effect has a missing dependency. So let's just head back to the activity dashboard, and yep, we've got a missing dependency for load activities based on the change, the refactoring we did earlier on. And in our login form and our register form, we've got the label that we're no longer using. So in our register form, let's remove the label, and same thing for the login form as well. And let's just refresh. And in our activity form, there's the activity store import that we're not using as well. So let's just remove that as well. And we should then have a clean console. And indeed we do. And I can view and I can manage events and cancel and go back to our activities page, and everything's looking better. And there's only one tiny thing I want to do before we finish this section, and it's the formatting of these dates. I'm just going to correct this so that it shows the dates in a better format. So I'll just go back to our activity list, and where we're specifying the group, let's bring in format from dates FNS. And we'll give the group a format. And for the format string, we'll use EEEE for the long day and DO for the day of the month, and then we'll just use the long month as well. And let's just go and take a look. And that's better. So this brings us to the end of the login and register on the client side section. And we've achieved quite a lot here. So let's go back to VS Code and save all of our changes into source control. And 18 of them in my case. So I'm just going to stage these changes and say end of section 13 in this case, and commit these and send them on up to GitHub. And we'll finish this up with a summary.